Welcome to the Weekly Square with me, Duduzi Brian. This is your show where we keep you up to date by bringing you some of the top headlines from the African continent. As I mentioned last week, I am holding the fort and helping Natasha nurture this baby. We keep up with what's happening in the great African continent so that you don't have to. The date of the recording is the 27th of April 2023. Let's dive in. We'll kick off with what's happening in Sudan. It's been a hot topic for the past 2 weeks. Heavy explosions and gunfire have rocked Sudan's capital of Khartoum, and residents have said despite the extension of the fragile truce between the country's two top generals, whose power struggle has left hundreds dead, the war is still ongoing. After 2 weeks of skirmishes that have turned Khartoum into a war zone and thrown Sudan into turmoil, a group of international mediators, including the African Union, the Arab nations, and the United Nations with the United States, are intensifying the pressure on the rival generals to enter into talks and resolve the crisis that's happening at the moment. Dozens of nations have scrambled through the fragile truce to evacuate as many of their citizens as they can. And I think we're all united in that a peaceful solution needs to be found as soon as possible. As we stated last week, the ramifications right across the East African region could be catastrophic. We move on now to South Africa. Ramaphosa's government is building a concrete border wall between South Africa and Mozambique. The KwaZulu-Natal provincial government had made a decision to resume construction of a concrete wall along the South Africa-Mozambique border. This is to curb the theft of motor vehicles and movement of illicit goods between the two countries. Now, I put this on to you. Could this be problematic in a country where xenophobia has been a problem? Or is it fully justified? I put it on to you. If you could write in, send us your comments and your thoughts on this. Is this justified or is it problematic? We'll move on now to Nigeria. The Nigerian government has postponed a census due to take place next week, and a new date will be set by the incoming government, the Information Ministry has said. The census was meant to take place between the 3rd and the 7th of May. It is a second postponement this year to the census, the results of which affect the sharing of oil revenues and political representation amongst the 36 states and over 300 ethnic groups in Africa's most populous country. And Nigeria's population is estimated at more than 200 million by the United Nations. These figures are expected to double by the year 2050. This would mean that Nigeria will be the third most populous country behind China, India, and it will overtake the United States. Now, every time this sort of figures come up about the population growth within the continent, the first thing that comes into my mind is productivity and production levels. They somehow need to be increased. Somehow all the raw materials within the continent need to be produced within the continent, and the finished product needs to be shipped from the continent, not the raw material being sold. But that is probably a conversation for later on in the podcast. We will pop over now next door to Ghana, and Ghana's GDP growth rate has slowed drastically in 2023. It is estimated now that it is at 1.3%. Ghana's economy will slow significantly right across the year as the Economist Intelligence Unit is forecasting. This is below the projections of the World Bank, which was at 1.8%, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which was at 1.6%. And this will furthermore be compounded by that the government in Ghana is committed to fiscal consolidation right through to 2027 in a bid to bring together the public finances and debt back into a sustainable path, underpinned, of course, by the IMF program. Now, the IMF program in Ghana, the whole idea that underpins it is to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability while protecting the vulnerable and preserve financial stability while laying a solid foundation for inclusive recovery. Now, the most interesting part about the economy in Ghana at the moment is that the 2024 election is looming. Now, how will the cost of living crisis, austerity, affect the electorate in their decision making over the next sort of 18 months or so? It'll be definitely interesting, and we'll sure keep you up to date with that as much as we can. Now, to round us off, we've got our joke of the week. Always end it on a light note, all right? That's what we always say. And the joke of the week is this: Joe Biden has officially launched his 2024 presidential campaign. I'm only joking, guys. I'm only joking, but he has launched his campaign. We would love, obviously, as always, to get your thoughts on these and any other headlines we may not have covered. Be sure to keep up with the conversation and keep it going on social media. Use the hashtag #TheWeeklySquare or hashtag #ChatWithNat. You can always email us, chatwithnatshow@gmail.com, or follow chatwithnatshow on Instagram. Now, we are trying to find a way of trying to get your responses as part of the show. We'll work on that and make it better as we go along. So thank you to everybody that's following us and joining and all the sort of business that has to do with social media. This has been The Weekly Square, a Chat with Nat production as always, bringing you headlines from the African continent. I have been your host, Mduduzi Brian. Look after yourselves, keep safe, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye for now.